Welcome to Fire Engineering's Humpday Hangout, Politics and Tactics with Frank Ricci and P.J. Norwood. As always, this show brings you a cast of characters, or we like to say leaders, from many different avenues or areas of the fire service, from politicians to fire service representatives to just supporters of the fire service. And today's show is no different. We have Tom Jenkins, research manager with UL's Fire Safety Research Institute and a senior advisor to the National Emergency Response Information System, or better known as NERIS. Prior to joining the NERIS project, he served as a career firefighter over 26 years, retiring as a fire chief of City of Rogers, Arkansas, after leading the organization for 15 years. Chief Jenkins published numerous articles and works in a wide array of online and print publications. He sits on some NFPA panels, including 1710 and 1960. He previously served as IFC's Homeland Security and Terrorism Committee and the IFC Firefighter Safety through Advanced Research Working Group. Chief Jenkins in 2017 and 2018, he was the president of the IAFC, served on the board of directors of IFC from 2015 to 2019 in many different capacities. He's also a former member of the advisory board for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, which is extremely important to mention here. He's also served as appointed member of the Homeland Security Advisory Council in 2021 and the FEMA National Advisory Council from 23 to 25. So as you can see, Chief Jenkins, and this is only a piece or a small part of all the things that he's done for the fire service, he brings a whole wealth and a wide range of experience and topics that we can chat about tonight. And, one of the main goals is to get the chief to discuss NERIS and what NERIS is going to do with the fire service. But I'm sure Frank Ricci has some questions to start off the show tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to the real host of the show, Frank. Frank, good evening.
I don't know if I'm the real host, PJ. We do this together. But Tom, it's an honor to have you on the show. And before we get into NERIS and you put it on your company man hat, we want to just talk about some national issues that are affecting the fire service to see where you fall on them and where you see the fire service going forward. Today, we've seen President Trump sign an executive order bringing back the military men and women who opted out of getting the shot, when we know that the shot was based off, and I'm vaccinated, but we know that the shot was based off a faulty premise. We were all told that you're not going to get the virus or spread the virus. And people, while the pandemic's over, firefighters from New York to Seattle have lost their livelihood on this. Where do you see this transferring to the fire service? Should those workers be brought back?
I think that one thing's for sure is that whether or not, what decisions and variables go into, a vaccination was not what any of us signed up to do, right? Like we were in a circumstance when that pandemic really hit that I think what was really governing the direction of every fire service leader was a little bit of fear and a lack of information. And what we have today, and that's what you highlighted, is, we have more information. And regardless, the other thing that we have to contend with is I know of no department who's not dealing with a recruitment and retention. I'd call it a crisis. And so, yeah, it seems to me like it's probably time to have that discussion, and different communities have different things that they prioritize. But one thing's for sure, if there's good firefighters out there for that chose not to, utilize a vaccination for good reason, I would hate to see them on the sidelines when what we desperately need is more good firefighters.
Very well said. Would you be for the Trump administration withholding funding until departments bring these fired firefighters back through grants?
What I think is that, I've obtained a real good perspective working on NERIS. I used to think that I had a real good understanding of our nation's fire service just because of my time in the hot seat at the International Association of Fire Chiefs. But what has really given me a good perspective is this project that, when you're talking 50 states and 27,000 some odd fire departments, one thing's for sure, it is there's a lot of differing priorities. There's a lot of departments that have, the characterization of their communities are different. And I think that this business is hyper local. And so what I think we would want to do is encourage those departments to do what's right for their membership and their communities. And I think that when they do that, everybody wins. Federal decisions that try to trickle down to the hyper local fire service, to me, I think there's a better way to solve them.
Interesting. What is your take? And PJ, do you want to weigh in before I move to a different topic?
No, I like the rapid fire. It's okay. Go for it.
Sorry, Chief. He's a chief. He's used to being in the eye of the storm here. No, we just try to figure out on politics and tactics where everybody stands, especially you're from Oklahoma, you're from Arkansas, you have a different perspective. PJ and I are trapped in the Northeast. So we like to see what else is out there. Where do you fall on the chemicals in the forever chemicals in firefighters' gear?
That's a great question. And what maybe I feel like a lot of other people in that, one thing's for sure is that nobody signs on this job to get cancer, right? Nobody signs on to this job to get some chronic ailment that they're not able to shake, as they enjoy what is hopefully a very lucrative defined benefit pension. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to do things that minimize the long-term chronic risk to firefighters, knowing that you can't eliminate all risk to firefighters. And like everything, I think that, what I still have questions on is what's replacing that, right? When you remove, PFAS and PFOS, what's the next thing? How long did it take for us to really understand what those chemicals were and whether or not they were bad for us? And what are firefighters, wearing and doing on their off duty that may be contributing as well? I think that, when it comes to health and welfare and the ability of firefighters to enjoy retirement, I know of nobody who's not in support of all things holistically that fit in those categories. I think that, as a fire chief, I always kind of struggled with, we have to take care of them when they're on duty, and we have to also give them enough information that they're safe and they're productive off duty to extend both their career and their life ultimately. So, yeah, I'm not for anything in those garments that harms firefighters. I know of nobody that would, but I'm also interested in knowing what's replacing those things, and are those better or worse? And so, if I had more information, I may have a better opinion, but I don't know that I do.
All right. And then the last hot button topic before we get into the more friendly part of the evening is,
I like this, actually. This is pretty good.
We've seen a backlash with the Trump administration on DEI. And I think a lot of people misunderstand what DEI actually is. While we have a lot of firefighters experiencing it in the fire service, the public lacks an understanding. I'm not talking about the diversity classes from the 1990s. When I was a firefighter in Montgomery County, Maryland, a college live-in, before you even moved into the firehouse, you had to take a class called Cultural Diversity and EEO in the Law. And in the 1990s, the focus of that class was understanding our shared purpose, and it was understanding proper workplace etiquette under the law, under the rule of law. What is the rule of law that governs your workplace? What are your policies and procedures that govern the workplace? And getting everybody together to understand that we're here for a shared purpose. And we saw that cost the county hours and maybe a couple $100 because they were given by chief officers or training officer staff or chiefs. But now what we see is DEI taking away hundreds of hours and millions of dollars. I mean, in LA, we've seen the Los Angeles City Fire Department budget siphoned off over $1 million for DEI initiatives. And trying to talk about people's privilege and dividing people into oppressed and oppressor. I always wondered, PJ, where did Branch Rickey fall into that oppressed or oppressor? Because it was Jackie Robinson's own individual merit that broke the color barrier in baseball. But without Branch Rickey, a man of privilege, there would have been no Jackie Robinson in Major League Baseball. So I think whenever we take something and put it into a binary choice, it's a little bit intellectually dishonest and lazy, that we're more complicated. And I think the individual needs to be the one that comes forward. So, but what's your take on DEI going forward in the fire service?
I think that, I don't know that I have the most refined opinion on it. What I do know is that in the firehouses that I've had the privilege to work in, there was always a priority placed on making sure that people were included around the kitchen table. And that was important, right? That was important for me as a leader because we had to treat each other good, knowing that we didn't always have the same skin color. We didn't always have the same gender. We didn't always have the same political beliefs. There's a lot of issues that divide, at the firehouse. They're not just maybe the more commonplace DEI issues. And so what I believe is that we have to invest in hiring people that have the right values. And when you hire the people with the right values that understand common courtesy, that value differences in other people, I promise that the people I have learned the most from in my life, many of them are very different than me. Their upbringing, their ethnic background, their religion, and some of those best and most challenging conversations I had at the firehouse. And so maybe I see this through rose-colored glasses, but I actually think the fire service, while there are always examples of knuckleheads and people who behaved inappropriately, right? We're talking harassment. We're talking things that are divisive to teamwork and the things that I think all of any good firefighter.
Yeah, and that has no place in the fire service.
Yeah, absolutely. What I find though is that, the fire service, we got it. I learned so much about the value of other cultures and religions and people from the fire station. I was taught those lessons outside of DEI classes. And so is it to say that DEI programs don't have value? No, there's probably plenty of people who have found value in them. But I would say that me personally, that I found that the fire service at its core, right? I've never seen the bell go off, right, for a fire and firefighters not rush as quickly because it happens to be in a low socioeconomic part of town, right? Or that was a community that had this religion or that religion. I've always seen firefighters that react because they care about people. They care about humanity. And so as long as we're hiring people like that believe in those values, I think DEI is going to be alive and well, regardless of what the classes are, at least in our business.
No, I think that's very well said, but it comes down to individual merit, and we need to stop dividing people that don't wish to be divided. I mean, you're just talking about the importance of the kitchen table. I cannot agree more. I mean, one of the best things Robert Gahuli ever did as a battalion chief was say, no phones at the table. Everybody's going to eat together and go over what the day is. But that doesn't bringing in a cheesecake that your mom made isn't taking $1 million away from the fire budget to try to indoctrinate people. There's a distinct difference, but everybody should be treated with respect. PJ?
Frank, during all of this debate, especially over the last couple of weeks and following the media, every time I hear about the DEI, it keeps bringing me back to something, that you taught me was merit matters. And your lawsuit that's made it all the way to the Supreme Court, that was what it was based on. Hiring the right individuals to do the job that are capable of doing the job, regardless of their background, regardless what they look like. And I know we can probably do a 5-hour show just on your lawsuit, but every time I hear this debate, it brings me right back to the lawsuit that you and, 19 others dubbed the New Haven 20 brought all the way up to the Supreme Court, Ricci versus DiStefano.
And that lawsuit in the end promoted qualified individuals that happen to be Black, happen to be Hispanic, and happen to be white. Achievement is neither limited nor determined by your race, sex, or sexual orientation. But we need to make sure we're trying to measure that individual merit and not just lumping everybody together. PJ, do you have another question for our great esteemed guest?
No, and I do have another comment. We're going to backtrack a little bit on the PFAS and the PFAO issue. Chief, when I agree completely with you about what's next, because we've seen 3M try that bait and switch already. When they, with the Teflon pans, they tried that bait and switch, and exactly what they replaced the Teflon with was the same thing. It just had a different marker that, we weren't picking up on it. And thank goodness for, Grant Peasley and the work that he's done through the University of Notre Dame to figure that out for us. But I think the message that we need to keep pushing to the fire service is that everything that we come in contact with during the day has forever chemicals in it, right? We can't get away from it. We signed up and you said, we signed up, I forget your words about, we signed up not willing to get cancer or whatever. And, we talked to firefighters and I said, well, I knew that was part of the job. I signed up and it's okay. And my combat to that is, yeah, well, your wife and your daughter and your son and your family didn't sign up for that. So I think the message right now for us is, we have to make sure that we're reducing our risk wherever we possibly can. Changing the culture of wearing our structural firefighting gear 24/7 just to go get the meal or public service calls, look at single layer gear or look at policies, procedures to not wear that structural firefighting gear for non-structural fire response is, right? Because we can't get away from it. We can't wrap ourselves, like Anthony Davillo says, we can't wrap ourselves in cotton. It's a dangerous job. We're going to get cancer, but we need to really make sure that we're taking steps every place we can to reduce our risk, right? To give us the ability to enjoy that pension like Frank and I are, and I assume you are as well, Chief.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a thought that I had, and I'll leave the company name out of it. But I had this epiphany. I was asked to facilitate a meeting with some PPE manufacturers and the IFC Safety, Health, and Survival section a couple of years back, and I had this epiphany after the meeting in that one of the handicaps we have in this job is the protective clothing. And is the culture around it, right? Like you mentioned, wearing it to the store. Some of those behavioral things we can control. We can control exposure to the gear once we recognize that it's contaminated. But, take the fire service and this affinity we have for our gear, our protective clothing. I'm a hypocrite, right? I got helmets hanging on the wall behind me. And apply that to the medical profession, right? Like, if we were all surgeons, would we ever just like, man, I got these really cool surgical gloves, I got to go clean these things for the next surgery, right? We would never for a cross-contamination thing. And I think that's what the fire service has to inch closer to is we can't have one-time use bunker gear because of the customization of it, because of the cost. But maybe 10 years is too long to have bunker gear. Maybe that's part of the solution is that, we have to reduce the lifespan of the bunker gear so that at least bad stuff when it gets on there, it's not hanging on there for forever. I don't know, but we know our culprit certainly, a variable there is the PPE.
PJ, just to jump in there, because you said that, forever chemicals are in everything, and it's important to realize that there's no PFAS animals running around. It's man-made. It can't be found in nature. And while it's in everything, what Diane Cotter and Graham Peasley taught us is that it's got just tremendous amounts of these forever chemicals in our gear that's shedding off, and now it's getting into your bloodstream. So we definitely need to make that change. I mean, polar bears even have forever chemicals in them, and they haven't been eating firefighters. So yes, absolutely, it's all over the place, but it's so prevalent in our fire gear to levels that just defy logic, and the companies can do better. We can innovate our way out of this, and we could do better. The problem is that all these organizations were taking money from the chemical companies and weren't changing. And it took a mom grabbing the chiefs and grabbing the International Association of Firefighters and making them kick and scream all the way to where we are now, where we're taking a hard look at this. So I think that we have to take a better job of care of each other and realize that, okay, let's always follow the money, and we can innovate our way out of this and do better.
And I agree, Frank, and I think we are, right? I think the culture is slowly changing, but you guys know as well as I do, change this culture is extremely, extremely challenging, especially when it comes to being prideful about our turnout gear and our helmets, the way that we look, right? But, Frank, you said something when you go all the way back to our Tactical Perspectives DVD series when we were talking about PPE. You said you find any police officer and you ask them what their bulletproof vest protects them from, they know. But if you ask a firefighter what their PPE will protect them from, they have no idea. Well, fire and heat, because they give us new gear and we're so excited we got something new. We don't read the warning labels. We have no idea what the THL.
We were texting in class during that lesson, PJ.
Yeah, and we just put it on, and we don't know the point of no return. You go all the way back to Chief Vinny Dunn and FDNY and what the gear can actually do for us and what it can't do for us. So I think it goes all the way back to the education, like fire academies, and what we're trying to do now at the Connecticut Fire Academy, really educate the recruits, right, all the way down to, hey, this is great turnout gear, but this is what it does for you, and this is what it does not do for you.
But how cool is it that we can have that conversation? That we're talking about science, right? We're talking about, empirical data. We're moving the needle in the right direction. I mean, these were conversations that I think we all probably got on around the same time and have been in the business within some standard deviation of each other. And I think it's neat that we're able to have these conversations, and it's a complex interplay, right? I admire people that acknowledge that this is a dangerous profession, right? It's dangerous to be on the highway. It's dangerous to go in buildings that are on fire. And so we'll never eliminate all of that, but let's the things we can control, right? Like that we talk about these forever chemicals, the caloric intake of firefighters and their nutrition, their sleep. I love that these are topics that over time, we're not going to get it perfect. There's no crystal ball magic bullet here, but man, it's neat to me that the profession, my middle kid who's 15, he's talking about getting on the job without any of my influence. And it's cool to look at him and know that it's not going to be a safe job, but it'll be a safer job and a better job, arguably. He'll get a chance to enjoy his pension, I don't know, maybe a decade longer than us, if we keep the momentum up.
Especially if you get him on nice and early and young.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Tom, did you say sleep? No chief or union official should ever mention the word sleep ever. If I happen to have a good night on truck 4 when I was in the city and I came home and my wife said, "Hey, Frank, how was your night last night?" I'd say, "You wouldn't believe the night I had." And I would take a nap out of principle. I mean, you guys are the ones killing our budgets when they say, "Oh, we only had a kitchen fire." No, you saved everybody's belongings. That's what they want, is for you to stop it at a kitchen fire. PJ?
Yeah. Fred, I think all those conversations, are great lead-ins to, one of the main reasons we have you here tonight, Chief, is to talk about NERIS, National Emergency Response Information System, and, data and tracking data. And some of our listeners may have no clue what we're talking about, which I'm actually kind of surprised. But I've been asking firefighters over the last couple of weeks since we talked about having you on the show, say, "Hey, what do you know about NERIS?" And I keep getting the who? Know about what? They're not very familiar. And say, well, what do you know about NINFERS? Oh, and they know about NINFERS, right? Because we're educating NINFERS at the Firefighter 1 standard, right? All the way down into JPR recruit school, we talk about NINFERS. But NERIS has not tracked down to a lot of company officers or firefighters actually working today, right now, that might be listening. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on to talk about NERIS, so we can help you, right, bring this to the fire service, right? Because this is next, right? NINFERS is going away. Thank goodness for all of those that used it or still using it. It's going, right? And NERIS is coming. I have not seen it. I have not done a demo of it, but I've read a lot about it and listened to a lot of calls like this. So I'm interested to hear you explain it to the company officers and the chief officers and the firefighters that are working today on what it is, when it's coming, and what they need to know about it.
And Tom, we're going to be a little skeptical of anything you say, because we were told that NINFERS, this new government program, was going to be great, and it was horrible. So go ahead.
You don't look old enough to have been around when that was rolled out, Frank. I think PJ, your lead-in spot on. That 1.2 million firefighters in the country, and it's impossible to reach them within the time frame that we've been working at this. We got about 19 months under our belt with the NERIS contract. And we've been working fast because the legacy system NFERS goes away at the end of the year. And for a lot of reasons, not the least of which, it hadn't been updated in about 26 years. And so while some things within the old system might still work, the vast majority of it does not. We have no ability to capture emerging problems, things like lithium ion batteries. We have no ability to really count some of the incident attributes that matter, things like mass casualty incidents, active shooters, active assailants. And what it typically has produced, the legacy system has produced a lot of firefighters, arguably like us, that memorize codes, and we knew how to get through the report as quickly as possible because we didn't want to spend a lot of time with it, and we didn't derive a lot of value from it. I don't intend to villainize people for kind of just getting through the busy work, because it was rare to find departments that really enhance the NFERS data to do anything with it. Not saying it didn't happen, but it cost them money, right? It took people to do it, software programs. They had to bring in CAD data. Here's why we're doing it. Here's why it matters, is that I don't think any of your listeners would argue that the job of a fire chief all the way down to a firefighter, it's more complex today. It's more demanding. We live in a hypercritical era of history where, my wife can get a good idea and order something off of Amazon or Walmart or wherever. It's like at the door by the end of the day, not next week. And so people are used to this instant, whatever they need, they get it instantly. Our legacy system, nothing was instant. 18 to 24 months to really see any trend. I don't know if you gentlemen have been in the real estate market lately and bought anything, but if you do, I know exactly what you did, right? You got an app on your phone, and that app on your phone brings in definitive third-party data sources, and it tells you not just about the piece of property you're looking at, but the schools, the crime, the you name it, right? Now it even includes information about natural hazards. And you have that at your fingertips, and you think about how woefully ill-prepared our nation's data system is to do that for decision makers, whether that's a company officer who wants to know, hey, we've got some smoke alarms laying around the fire station. Let's get these hung up somewhere where they might do some good. Or to the fire chief who's saying, I know we need more staffing, but if I can only add 2 more people per shift, what companies do they go to? And these are just make-believe problems, but they simulate real problems. And so what we're trying to do with NERIS is we're trying to modernize the data system. And when I say that, we're trying to make it better, and we're trying to make it faster for firefighters, because firefighters in every city I visit, they're not looking for things to do. They're pretty busy, right? They're up 3 or 4 times after midnight. They're going to calls that they used to not go on, right? We're lifting people out of bed and finding the TV remote and going to nursing homes. And so we've got to give firefighters and company officers an opportunity to tell us the story without bogging them down with codes and ways to cheat the system. And we have to make the system faster, so that, if we can give them an opportunity to get a report done quicker, we get that data, we get it in near real time at the state level, at the national level. And pretty soon we're using real data to understand what the heck's going on and how we can deploy resources better. And that'd be my elevator speech as to why it matters.
Tom, one thing that wasn't collected enough, and I know Phoenix did a really good job at it. I tried to emulate it by trying to make it a priority in New Haven, and it was like pulling teeth, was changing the mindset from property loss to property saved. Because I was like, all I got to do is go on your Zillow and estimate the value of the house. So a kitchen fire that caused $300 worth of damage, now the fire department saved, because if the fire department didn't arrive and stop this, it would have been an entire loss. I mean, we're almost been a victim budget-wise of our own success. We stopped the fire in the incipient stage instead of letting it get bigger, and then we say we made no impact, and they just write it off. But then when it comes for budget time, for budget justification, grant justification, you're missing that knowledge. Is this new system going to have a way that's even easier to calculate based off an estimate property saved? Because I think for chiefs, politicians, policymakers, and union presidents, that data is invaluable because it's so easy to understand.
I feel like I should get you like a NERIS shirt or something and have you say that in other settings.
Well, you'll have this podcast to send along.
There you go. That's exactly what we want to do, right? Like there's 10 years ago, and maybe even a little bit longer, I'm trying to think, but we didn't have the data that we have at our fingertips now, that if you're going through an NFIRS report right now, if you take the effort, you can get a good, estimate on what the property value was prior to the incident, but it takes work, right? And at 3 a.m., I can tell you what I'm going to give it my best guess. That's what most people will do. And so, yes, we want to bring in those data sources, but I'd say, Frank, it's more than that, right? It's more than just property loss and property saved that matters. And I'm glad you referenced that. I think that was an Arizona State University study that they did out of, Maricopa County somewhere. And that's exactly right, that we can do a better job understanding that. It's also, we tried to enhance this system by expanding the metrics of significance that we collect and asking questions about, did you save anybody? You pull anybody from an IDLH environment? Because that matters too, right? Whether you evacuated them, whether you found them in IDLH conditions and you remove them through the same point of entry. We want to know about where we find civilian victims. Those folks over at the Firefighter Rescue Survey have been doing wonderful work. And components of that are within the system. It's not as comprehensive. It's not intended to replace FRS. But a good idea is a good idea. We're collecting information on Maydays. You find firefighters who are lost, trapped, entangled, low on air, disoriented. When those situations happen, we've got no official way to collect that information. And those are circumstances that are pretty damn important to know about. And so that's part of it. We're collecting information even on simple things that are like, how many people did we displace? I'd venture to say where you all are from, same as where I live. And that's there are more housing insecure, right? More homeless on the streets than I've ever seen. Does fire play a role in that? And the answer is we don't know. But if we start asking the question that in this apartment fire, how many people were displaced by that fire? Not just injured, not just, hopefully not, but if we have fatalities, we want to collect that too. But displacements is important. And so, yeah, you find attributes like that are just, it's going to make the system. And I'm an optimist when it comes to it. But I think a firefighter, when they start to see questions within NERIS, it's not going to take them long to know this is different. And this can make a difference in my city, in my county, in my district, and I think that's exciting.
And Chief, I got two things for you. One is you gave an excellent example a couple weeks ago regarding a church fire, but being a vacant church, right? I think it would be beneficial to offer something like that. But also, every time I hear this, my firefighter and company officer brain goes to, this is just more work for me, right? They're grabbing more data, so this is more boxes. This is more 111 codes that I need to remember of what I'm responding to, right? And that's my, I don't want to do this company officer mindset, right? Not the chief officer, not that bigger picture. So could you dispel some of those concerns? Is this going to be more time consuming? Is it going to be harder? And what's the value for a company officer to actually take the time and not just pencil whip these forms to get it done?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, buddy. Here's what I acknowledge is that this system is designed and is focused on the firefighter and on the company officer and on the fire chief. I'm lucky enough to be the one firefighter advisor to the project, but it's a project that is assembled with data scientists, software engineers, the smartest folks I've ever worked around. And that's not the most important thing on their resume. The most important thing on their resume is that they really care about our business. And it's rare to find people who aren't in your business that care about your business, but this is it. And so is it more work? No, I don't think it's more work. I think it's different work. What we've tried to do is we didn't take infers and say, hey, let's put new wrapping paper on it and call it NERIS. That'd be neat. What we did is we said, let's reimagine this whole thing. Like what really mattered. Infers started in the early 70s, right? It's a byproduct of the Fire Prevention and Control Act of 1974. And it grew stale, right? And with this system, we reimagined it, and we want to give everybody from a local company officer who wants to do their job better and understand what's going on in their first due area to a fire chief who's dealing with limited resources and he wants to get the biggest bang for their buck in a risk reduction effort or in staffing to figure out where it helps with deployment of resources. And so, your average company officer, I'd say, no, it's not more work, but it's better work. And it's work that I think when they take a peek behind the curtain and they start operating in it, they're going to find value in, because that's our focus, is to make sure that firefighters all the way up to fire chiefs, they get a dividend back. The old system was just a chore. It was just on the to-do list. And I wish that wasn't the case, but that's pretty much the fact. And this system is designed to get back to those fire departments. And until we can say that we're doing that, then we still have work to do with NERIS. And so I think you're hitting on what is maybe the most important topic with NERIS, is that you can modernize the system. You can make it better. It doesn't take any longer to complete one of our incident reports than it does a side-by-side apples-to-apples infers report. Matter of fact, 4 of the 6 prototype departments actually said it was quicker. That's one of our goals. But the challenge here, I think we all can agree with, is we've got to change the mentality of company officers and firefighters so that they understand data is their friend, right? We got to have, we want to make sure we have bunker gear. We want to make sure we got good trucks. Got to have good training. Nobody's debating those things. We got to have good data, because the resources we need are insulated in some sort of legislative body, city council, board of commissioners. And in order for us to articulate arguments to get more, different, better, expanded, resources, emotional arguments will not suffice anymore, right? We're going to have to take what are good, actionable stories, the humanity of the fire service, and we got to couple it with data that matters, right? Because I don't see any elected officials today that don't say, what's the data say? And we don't have a system where we can really do that right now. We're going to have a system that is very robust in doing that. And so I think when your company officers, PJ, when your company officers know, yeah, I got to make sure I don't half-ass this report because this matters to make sure that I can protect the staffing on my rig, or I can get another company assigned to this house, or to help us understand the population that we're sworn to protect. I think that's when we start to see the culture of the fire service buy into data a little bit more.
I think that's very well said, because that's one of the major problems in the fire services. A lot of officers just view themselves as higher paid firefighters, and they just want to do the fun part of the job, not realizing that badge comes with responsibility, and data affects everything from grants to budget. So I think that was very well said. I want to ask you this question because I know somebody's going to ask it. So I'm just I think I know the answer, but I just want to preempt it. This doesn't have a medical component. So when the company runs or maybe I'm wrong, when the company runs an EMS call, can they do their EMS report on this system, or do they need a separate system for that?
Well, nobody would probably design the way in which EMS and fire reporting operate today, right? EMS rolls up to the Department of Transportation. Ultimately, this system rolls up to the Department of Homeland Security through the USFA. And so responses by fire resources, oftentimes you get two reports, right? Especially if you're doing transport EMS. What we did within NERIS is we ask more questions about EMS. We ask like a handful of questions about EMS, because doesn't matter if it's New Haven or Rogers or wherever, about 60 or 70% of the runs are all coded a 321, right? It's an EMS call. And that's not sufficient to understand really the scope of what we do. What we did in asking those questions within our system is to make sure they were existing questions within NEMSIS. And that's our kind of sister program that runs they're looking at patient care. We're looking at incident response, right? So you can have one incident response with multiple patients. They're different systems, but what we have done is designed our EMS related questions so that they're identical, right? The values are identical. And so that a firefighter can answer the question one time, have it populate in both systems, keeping it as aerodynamic as possible. So we're getting more information about EMS within our system. We're trying to do that, and at the same time not create more work for the firefighter and EMS provider.
So do you think that's enough information captured for a non-transport entity? If they're just going there as the first responder, could they use that as their run form?
Absolutely. Yeah. If they're not required within the state to complete a patient care report, it's much better information if they're not already doing that. It just speaks to the criticality of the medical emergency, the type of the medical emergency. There's a lot of things going into one bucket right now. And, not all medical emergencies are created equal, right? Like we need to know a little bit more specificity to answer some questions that right now we can't even ask because we just don't have anything appropriate to answer.
PJ?
Yeah, Chief, in March, I believe, will be the 1 year mark from when you onboarded 6 departments as kind of to start demoing this. And where are you with that? And what's the timeline here, right? When could fire departments across the country see this being rolled out to them? And prior to that, how are we going to get them trained, right? What can somebody like, in my role now at the Connecticut Fire Academy, what can we do to help get the word out? Is online training going to be offered just through FSRI and NERIS, or is there, could you talk a little bit about that and how this is actually going to be rolled out to the fire service? Because NINFR is going away, and there's an awful lot of firefighters, company officers that we need to get up to speed on this.
I'm going to answer those in reverse order if you're cool with it. First of all, I'm glad that you asked about training, and I'm impressed that you recognize that we're just a month or so away from the anniversary of our prototype departments launching. Here's a cool fact with our prototype departments: 5 of the 6 of them did not train their firefighters. They flipped them the NERIS app, and they gave it to them on a cell phone or an iPad, and they said, "Hey, you all need to do dual reporting for a little bit." So that was super popular, right? And of 5 of those 6 departments, they offered no training, and the firefighters had no trouble. It's intuitive enough that it just makes sense to firefighters, which is what we were shooting for. Now, it's not divinely inspired, not a perfect program. We have a contractor to help us develop training resources. Those are being released weekly, monthly. And the reason they're not already out is the system is still, we're live right now, but you still have all of our technology partners, all the records management vendors. They're still doing development work as we speak because they had to wait on us to be ready. And we had to be as slow as you can be in a 19-month build because we wanted to make sure we were getting the feedback from the fire service, right? We had to have that communication back to say, we don't like this. This needs to be expanded. This is stupid. And we got that. So training, the good thing is we're hiring people today. We may have all been of a generation where computers were they were allergic to a lot of the guys at the fire station when we got on because they didn't grow up around them. Everybody we hire today, they know computers, right? They know cell phones and tablets. And so the hardware portion of the training, somebody else did for us already. All we have to do, and this goes for NERIS if they're using our app itself, or if they're using many of them will, a third-party records management system. Our obligations is to make sure that the user interaction, right, the user experience just makes sense. Because every fire station I go in, they're not gathered around the kitchen table anymore, right? They're over there doing training on their, on their phone and on their tablet. And so I think that you'll find the experience with NERIS will be accelerated because the generation that's going to use it understands how electronics and technology operates. That being said, we are going to need, I was just today meeting with your executive director for the North American Fire Training Directors, Ken Willett. And, in this next year and the years to come, we are going to be extremely, we're going to need to extremely emphasize the need for our state training partners to help us, move the needle with educating firefighters, telling them not just why it's important, but also how things work within the new system. And so we're training is going to be a topic that just never ends. Now, when it comes to the rollout, we actually have 168 departments that have onboarded into the system. And it's important to acknowledge that, getting into this system is different. It used to be that all you were doing with the old system was just you're filling out a report, and the data from the report eventually went to the state, then it eventually went to the U.S. Fire Administration in Emmitsburg. And that's not how the new system works. The new system, when you're done with the report, it immediately they don't collect them at the end of the month and then email them. It's just immediately visible, like you'd expect in 2025. And the way in which these departments onboard is they create a profile. One of the problems with our nation is that we're clueless how many fire departments there are exactly. You can see numbers that say 32,000. Some numbers say 27,000 or 26. We don't know. And so the system is set up to actually not just collect better information about emergency response, but kind of like a census of all fire departments, where your stations are, what the staffing is at that station, what the staffing is on apparatus cornered at that station, so that we have a good repository of information about response resources across the country. So those 168 departments, many of them have just set up their profile within NERIS, and they're waiting for their records management system, their software vendor that they're using today. Those people are transitioning their programs, right? They're going from the old to the new, and they'll do that throughout 2025. And throughout 2025, what you're going to see is this pretty significant crescendo, where we're going to add hundreds of more departments next month in February. And then by the end of the year, we'll be over 20,000. That seems crazy, I know, but you have to remember these records management softwares, many of them have thousands of customers. And so once their development work is done, once they've tested to make sure that they're compatible with our system, as they come on board, we'll see large numbers. And it's a multi-pronged strategy just to educate departments, get the word out, and complex to say the least.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned how you don't even know how many firefighters are out there, and we're experiencing that in Connecticut. We actually were able to obtain some funding last year, and we're in the middle of a data collection study surveying every fire department in the state. And we have 169 towns and cities, and we might have like 300 or so different fire departments with many variables to that. Some have one member or two members, some have a couple hundred members, some have, 50 members, but only 10 are interior firefighters. The rest are social members, So at the state level, we're really trying to get a good understanding of what we have here in Connecticut so we can look at, funding and training and legislative priorities. Frank?
Tom, what's the cost of this program to a municipality that wants to sign on to this? And is this something that's mandatory because NERIS is going away, or how's that all work?
I couldn't have scripted questions from you gentlemen any better than you're doing tonight. So gold star to both of you, first of all. This is not a mandatory program, and it also is available at no cost. Now, that's a little bit deceiving, I think, because most departments, what NERIS is collecting from a national, data set is probably insufficient for many complex agencies that want to know more information. Here's what I mean by that, is that even though we have a free app that you could access with dial-up or on your cell phone to contribute incident data, the city of New Haven, for instance, they're going to want to know information about who's assigned to what rig, and they'll want to know other information about occupancies and inventory and PPE and training. And they'll want that all in the same system. And so many departments, they're using records management systems today for a reason, and they'll continue to do that. They'll just have those be NERIS compatible. And then, for smaller agencies that maybe aren't as complex, they'll be able to use our free app. And there's about 7,000-ish of those across the country, we think, that would be good candidates for it. As a matter of fact, of the 168 in the system right now, the handful that are fully onboarded, right? They've set up their profile and they're transmitting incident data. Those are small departments that are just using our free app to do so. The other ones using an RMS are still work to be done by those companies. You said, Frank, you said the word, is it mandatory? And so that's always a question that I get, and maybe even a little bit of clarification for what's out there is that the current system is not mandatory. NERIS, similarly, will not be mandatory. Now, I know of no firefighter or decision maker for sure that doesn't understand the value of data and wouldn't participate in it. But if there is a carrot, I suppose, to participating in NERIS, it'll be that in future assistance to firefighters and safer grant programs, just like today, you'll have to participate in NERIS in order to qualify for those grants. Okay, now you said it was free, and we know there's no such thing as free. So this is being paid for out of whose budget? This is, if there's anything that's pretty cool about this, if you follow, big federal programs, is that this was funded in a joint effort by the Fire Safety Research Institute, the United States Fire Administration, and the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. So we are building the system under contract to DHS, S&T, and the USFA. And so it is a collaborative effort that is a multi-year, multi-pronged effort to modernize and enhance the data system. And so, yeah, that's how it's funded. PJ?
So, Chief, I think we answered, a lot of questions, a lot of, maybe some concerns, and I'm hoping or hopeful that we maybe inspired some that haven't heard about this before, maybe to look for more information beyond this call, right? We're just kind of really scratching the surface. So as we get towards the end of this call tonight, where should chiefs, company officers, firefighters, where can they go to learn more? If there's a chief that's out there listening, says, hey, I want to get this going. I want to be ahead of the game. I want to start grabbing data. I want my company officers to start reporting to NERIS. What's the path for them, right? Where should they be going? Where should they be looking? I know you're not going to give your personal cell phone out and have them all start calling you, right? But what should they be doing to really start this?
I already tweeted that out. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I work for the fire service. It'd be all right. No, that's I would encourage them to be resourceful. We have the NERIS website, neris.fsri.org. You can also navigate to the USFA's website and find similar content. But what I would encourage your listeners, knowing that they're representing company officers and firefighters, and you've got a good diverse audience here that tunes in. What I would tell them is don't assume that your department is paying attention. We have been prototyping and testing this across the country in some of the most ultra rural departments, all the way up to some of the largest, right? Orange County, California, the FDNY, and everybody in between. But getting the word out is challenging. It's because it's a decentralized hyperlocal service. I mean, you kind of have to go to every county fire chiefs or firefighters meeting if you really think you want to get to every department, and there's not enough time, in the day. And, from time to time, I have to see my kids. I know when I show up and they start calling, they say, Tom's home. I know I've been traveling too much, as opposed to dad. Right. And so, people that are listening today need to go and knock on a door and say, hey, are we paying attention to this NERIS deal? And obtaining information is easy. As you go to that website, do a quick Google search. Ultimately, shouldn't be lost on any of your listeners and viewers that, this is a system that's designed for them. And it's not FSRI's system. It's not USFA's system. It's not your state fire marshal. It's not even your departments. That we want to give them a system that is helping all of us understand the challenges in front of us and gives us a path forward that's just better. As an example, I remember as a fire chief, like when did we start talking about lithium ion batteries? 5 years ago, 6 years ago? What do you think?
Well,
is that fair?
There was a couple of people talking about it. Chris Pepler and Jason Emery. There's a lot of experts now, but those Jason Emery and Chris Pepler were talking about it long before anybody else jumped in on this.
Like when it was like commonplace around the kitchen table, I don't know. I just remember as a fire chief, as an example, that there was a time I sat in my office, like trying to learn everything I could about lithium ion batteries. And I didn't know if we were supposed to be dragging around a swimming pool with a fire truck and a crane to like dunk the car in it. I didn't know if we were supposed to just let them all burn now and kind of go against the whole career that I chose, or if we use traditional tactics, or if we're supposed to like get some $10,000 piercing nozzle. And the reason I didn't know it is our system today didn't have the ability to recognize an emerging hazard when it really emerged, knowing by the time I was hearing about it, it had been around for a while, probably, right? And when we can design a data system that a hazard pops up, whether it's fire, non-fire, something that is impacting, our fire service community, and then we can push research to get closer to that interval of discovery. What we create is a business, right? An industry that is truly reactive to what we're seeing on the street. And that means we can take care of the community better. That means we can take care of our firefighters better. And that's what we're trying to build. And so, your people that want to know more, get to that website, but most importantly, understand why we're doing it and take a look around. There's very detailed technical information if they want it, but ultimately, we love the engagement. And if they want my cell phone number, I'd even give it to them.
Yeah, Chief, we're happy to have you, come on this show, anytime to talk about this stuff. We're happy to host you, here in Connecticut or any of your staff, because I know you probably have, a staff of a couple hundred working on this. So, easily, right?
Yeah.
Hosting you in Connecticut, do some seminars or speeches here. But anything that we can do to help this process, because I know big data is important. And I don't think it's as scary as some are going to make it sound.
Thanks, PJ.
Frank?
Chief, one last thought for the night. As Benjamin Israeli said, lies, damn lies, and statistics. One of the things that I see fire officers fall into with big data, because one of the only things the politicians seem to grab out of the NERIS data they have now is 80% of your calls are EMS runs. And anytime I ever would get that question, I would reject the premise of the question and explain, well, let's take a look at DPW. In the Northeast, they have plow trucks to plow for probably 15 plowable snows, but they collect garbage every day. it's not a true comparison to say that they only plow snow 5% of the time. So therefore that's any less important. The fact is the fire service, 100% of their calls are fire calls. And then because we were uniquely positioned in every neighborhood and can take on every task that the politicians give to us, we took on another separate function that stands alone. Is there any thoughts that a better way to put that through, that they're really not a comparison? They're two different tasks that the fire service took on?
I love how you said it. And I used to do a presentation about defending our delivery model and kind of recognizing that, the fire service of today is kind of, it's a balance between the traditional mission of the fire service and the emerging mission of the fire service, if you want to call things like EMS emerging. And it's like a cell phone, right? That if I was to survey any group I'm talking to and I say, who's used your cell phones today? Well, everybody's used their cell phones, right? The moment they wake up, they're on their cell phone. And only a fraction of them have used them for the traditional mission of the cell phone, right? Making phone calls. Most of them use it for the emerging mission of the cell phone, social media, taking pictures, whatever else they do. But you would still never buy a cell phone that didn't do the traditional mission really good. And so with NERIS, I kind of lean into this idea that we're made stronger by the diversity of call types and problems that we solve at the local level. If we can collect that information, tell that story, and it's not just what we go to and what we find, right? Like NERIS is going to do a job of telling the story after the parking brake is pulled and you throw the truck into pump gear. Now, there's a lot of story about what we do to actually solve the problem. That's more than just what you find, how long did it take you to get there, how much did you save, kind of thing. And so I think what I hope to do is that we'll just tell a more comprehensive story that'll kind of balance those two missions, Frank.
Very, very well said. PJ, we'll go around, do the last word of the night, and that's it for Politics and Tactics. PJ?
Yeah, Frank, thanks. Chief, I think this was a great show. We appreciate the information, and you clearly survived Frank's rapid fire at the beginning. I'd like to make sure that, everybody considers and thinks about. I'm doing another show in a couple hours tonight to talk about, kidney donation. We have one of our friends who gave a keynote speech a few years ago at FDIC, Steve Pegram, who gave a great keynote speech and talked about his wife and receiving a lung transplant. Well, she has some additional struggles today, and she's in need of a kidney. As a kidney donor, I understand the concerns because I was that guy that said, absolutely not. That's not something I'm going to do. And once I did a little research, used a little bit of data and used a little bit of science, I realized that there was absolutely no reason for me not to donate a kidney to a friend of mine. So if you have questions, if something that you're thinking about, or you have the guts to do it, but you don't have all the information, hit me up, call me, text me, email me. Let's have a conversation. I'd love to help educate everybody on kidney donation and how it's really not a big deal. And I'm actually healthier today than I was before I donated. So I appreciate the opportunity tonight, Frank, as always. Chief, thanks for joining us. It was a great show.
And PJ is truly courageous, and that really is being a hero, giving somebody your kidney. I mean, you could have just put a meme up on Twitter or Facebook, and that would have covered it in this society. That's good enough. Put a flag up and say, I support it. But PJ really put skin in the game, and really that's a remarkable, unselfish thing that you did for humanity. And I think that's great. Chief, last word of the night?
I don't even know how I follow a kidney donation, but I think I would say that maybe to tag on to some of the comments that we opened up with, that firefighters that are tuning into this, just there's a good quote by Mayor LaGuardia that says there's not a Republican or a Democratic way to pick up the trash. And I would say when it comes to firefighting and the business that we do, that we in a hyper political environment, we got an obligation to understand the problem and the way in which we solve it in communities big and small. So please take some time, whether you like data or not, whether you think this is an interesting topic or not, make sure your department's paying attention. Gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And PJ, if I wasn't already a fan, I'm even more so, brother.
Thanks,
and
Chief.
that's it for Politics and Tactics. High honor to have Chief Jenkins on. Hopefully we'll have him back on. The only thing I really Next time we'll have a little tougher questions. The only thing I'll really disagree with them on is we're not hyper political anywhere here. You know, I mean, this is America. This is what makes America great. So, best of luck to you in this new program, and I look forward to seeing it roll out. And hopefully you'll come back on the show because we'd love to have you. That's it. Mark, take us off. Bro.